I'm just ready to see the leader. But let me tell you, if he doesn't have a 3 foot long forehead, I will riot.
Alright, boys, who's riding with me? Maybe it's just because in the past week there's been a flood of negativity surrounding Captain America Brave New World, from stupid people getting angry at Anthony Mackie for stating fundamental and factual things about the character of Captain America, to legitimate concerns like reshoots. All of those tempered even the small notions of fun that I thought could be had, but I ended up really enjoying this. And not in a, wow, this movie isn't utter crap kind of way. It's just a baseline good Marvel movie. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, your nihilistic optimist, and I may have had my fair share of problems with this, chiefly a supremely underwhelming antagonistic side of the story. But before we get there, to the real meat of the review at the center, let's discuss some vague, non-spoiler things. The first of which is the action and visuals, both of which were significantly better than what I had expected, considering half of this was reportedly reshot. There's a genuine sense of art direction from minute 1 to the very end, and that can't be appreciated more. Along with that, the sets look good too. For the most part, I could tell that the actors were tangibly in whatever space the scene was taking place in. Of course, there were some noticeable green screen backgrounds, some more than others, but nothing took me out to a ridiculous degree. The aerial sequences were no Top Gun Maverick either, but they were fun. And I think all of that fit together because there was a color palette that the film stuck to, the only disappointing aspect of which was in character design, or just one in particular. But I'll get there, because next up are the characters and acting, all of which fit except for one person. And I'll talk more about it in spoilers, but maybe adding Han Solo to the MCU as a recast Thaddeus Ross was a good idea for ticket sales, but not much else. But again, I'll give the real reason for that later on in the spoiler section, because the next thing I want to talk about is the story. Something that started out moderately well, with some fun action featuring a minor villain that's separate from the main story but still has an impact, a formula I wouldn't mind seeing more of, but the narrative quickly overextends itself, including too many characters and plot lines to juggle. The overall intrigue and espionage is okay, but honestly, if I wanted to watch a kick-ass shield-throwing action flick with excellent spy thriller undertones, I would just watch The Winter Soldier for the 20th time. But if you're interested in this movie's story and aren't afraid of spending money on something that isn't emotional enough to stick its dramatic landing, then check out Captain America: Brave New World. Because even with those problems and many more, I still thought this was well worth the cash and time that I'd given it. But with that said, it's finally time to dive into the real meat of the review, the constructive criticism, meaning full spoilers from here on out. Well, there's not much to spoil since the trailers kinda already did that, but you have been warned. And the first thing I want to dive into is the villain, because man, I was so excited to see Samuel Stearns make his triumphant return as the leader. But right off the bat, his forehead is way too small, and I couldn't help but point that out right at the start of this review, even if it was a complete spoiler, because I'm just trying to warn the good folks at home, because this guy just had more of a bubbly head, and there are comic designs with him having the less bulbous, more sinewy, brainy look, but I just wanted to see a 3-foot Megamind-esque cucumber head. Is that so much to ask for? And I know what you're saying, it would have been MODOK all over again and would have looked terrible, and there's not really an argument against that, because that's exactly what it would have been like, but I still wanted to see it. Anyway, putting his look aside, I did love everything about the slow buildup of a mystery buyer mind-controlling key people to stay secretive and dangerous, though there should have been much more of a foreboding sense of not being able to trust anyone, something I guess modern-day Marvel is just bad at. But the worst thing about that whole storyline, aside from the leader's only sign of intelligence coming from predicting things, was that it was revealed who the evil person was years ago, and I can only imagine how mind-blowing it could have been if no one even knew he was returning. But sadly, that's just the reality of superhero movies. I've made a whole video essay recently about the epidemic of not being able to go into a superhero movie blind, and I guess I should have waited one more week, because Brave New World turned out to be a prime example of that. And that isn't true just for the leader. It's also very sadly true for the Red Hulk as well, who was in the movie for a total of about 5 minutes. And I may not have ever anticipated the Red Hulk to be in the movie for any longer, despite what the trailers led people to believe, but it did feel like a culmination of the many plot lines in the movie, though it just didn't work as well as it could have or should have. The aspect of Ross being affected by experiments to save his dying heart was a nice touch to explain away why it was happening, but it felt more like a throwaway line, and just wasn't as dramatic as Thaddeus willingly going through this like he does in the comics. Also, as promised, I gotta talk about Harrison Ford's acting, and maybe it was just me, but the couple times he would have a freak-out panic attack to kind of hint at the Red Hulk already being inside him, he was clearly meant to be angry and scared, but instead he just looked bewildered, something that I could blame on the actor's age, but there was never a scene that required him to be physical. So that wasn't the issue, but I don't know. I'm gonna rewatch this again tonight, and maybe those scenes will land better. However, something that clearly didn't work thanks to someone's age was Giancarlo Esposito's character, and his presence was cool. After all, that is the reason why you get him to play an antagonist, but he just wasn't a physical threat in the slightest. Seriously, Sam dropkicks him, and I was worried he might have murdered or at least crippled an elderly man. Also, every time Esposito was on screen, it was painfully obvious we were seeing a reshoot, just because it was, without fail, only him and Sam on screen. Although I am glad he was in the movie, because I always appreciate him playing a villain, but also because he tied together a lot of the other conflicts, most of which centered around Hulk stuff that has nothing to do with Captain America. And contrary to what a lot of people think, I actually don't mind that. Though I guess with that, I was hoping that the movie would bring up the themes of being a bystander with no real skin in the game, yet jumping in to save lives anyway. And I suppose the narrative does dip its toes into that idea, with Sam stating multiple times that he feels in over his head, but that should have been the central theme instead of an afterthought. And you know what else could have been given more focus? The entire storyline with Isaiah Bradley. The way that he was invited to the White House and was excited to go into the belly of the beast, only for everything to go wrong. And it genuinely hurt to see him thrown back in jail, making the missed opportunity to squeeze the drama out of all of that all the worse. A movie with him at the center would be considerably different from what we got, but I can't help but think of what could have been. And I know there wasn't nearly enough time to adapt something like the Truth, Red, White, and Black story, but it does suck that we didn't get at least a scene of that in this or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, there should have been a whole TV show or movie about it by now. But even without that seminal story that should have been turned into something by now, we could have gotten to compare and contrast Bradley's covered up Captain America to Sam's current day one, depicting how the surrounding politics have changed and how they dangerously haven't. There's interesting things to say there, but the movie obviously wasn't concerned with that or any other deeper thematic meaning, which I suppose is fine, but makes for an infinitely less compelling story than something with layers to peel off. But before I conclude, I want to look at some Easter eggs and notes that I couldn't clearly fit anywhere else, because I could have quickly brought up before that there's an early flashback to the events of The Incredible Hulk with Harrison Ford's Ross, but how else am I going to spend this much time on something dumb? Because in that scene, he has a full-on mustache, and I may need to see it again just to be sure, but I'm pretty certain it looked good, making me mad they didn't just go for it for the whole movie. But another dumb look happened to be Falcon, whose design was fine, all except for the visor, which was so low on his face you could see his nose. Maybe it would have worked if that visor was just 1 inch up, but where it was did not look good. And I could bypass Ruth's character altogether and just not bring her up, but I gotta mention how I wasn't bothered once by her. She was just a person who got the job of protecting the president because she was clearly qualified. You could pull from her comics past, which shows how she typically does what she's told, being a government stooge until she sees the truth, and that's exactly what she is in this movie, all of which has nothing to do with her nationality. I understand the outrage, and Marvel probably shouldn't have added her character to the story, considering the decades of history that her being there inherently brings up. And much less important was another member of the president's security detail with the last name Taylor, hinting at this S.H.I.E.L.D. secret agent type, who has no relation to James Taylor, another secret agent type who made an appearance in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bucky also makes an appearance as a politician running for Congress, setting him up for whatever depressing bureaucracy he'll be dealing with in the Thunderbolts, which I was always more excited for than this movie. And it definitely feels like I'm being very negative on Brave New World, because there are a lot of issues that I wanted to bring up, but yet again, I want to clarify that I had a lot of fun with this, and I think you will too, because if you allow me to bring up one last thing, there was a split second of Sam riding a missile like a surfboard, and frankly, that's worth the ticket price alone. But in all seriousness, if you've seen Captain America Brave New World, what did you think of it? Did you have as much fun as I did? Was there another problem you found with the story, or did my comprehensive list get it all? Drop a comment and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and have a wonderful rest of your day.